welcome to this special edition of ABN Cast. We're recording it at the T2RL Engage conference in London. It happens every year. ABN are very proud to be media partners of this event. We have been for the past 3 years. And last year we caught up with our interviewees today from Sabre because they announced their first launch partner for something called Sabre Mosaic. We'll talk about that in a minute. And that was Virgin Australia. So that was big news last year. Obviously, we've had a year of progress since then. So I'd like to introduce, firstly, Mike Reyes, Senior Vice President for Product Management at Sabre. Mike, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's good to see you again, Lee.
And you. And we also are very, very honoured to have the Chief Commercial Officer for Sabre. Welcome to Roshan Mendis. Welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to see you. So let's start off with a bit of an update on where we are with Mosaic. I remember last year we chatted about where Mosaic's come from. It's come from your partnership with Google. Google are very much your dev and tech partner on this. So just tell us what's been happening in the last 12 months with Mosaic and what's developed since then.
Sure. So there's a few things that we're actually giving an update to everyone here at the conference about. The first is our continued investment in our AI tools. We're actually calling that Sabre IQ, and that's really the AI layer that's powering some of the Sabre Mosaic solutions. We'll talk a little bit about those, our launch of continuous revenue optimizer, et cetera. But really the big update is last year we had our launch customer, Virgin Australia. So we're going to spend a little bit of time with them this afternoon to get an update on where they are. I think they're going to say they're starting to create their first orders. They're working with us on some of those pieces on top of Sabre IQ. The other thing we're going to talk about is the launch of that revenue optimizer solution with Riyadh Air, which is a soon-to-be selling and flying airline based out of the Middle East. And we'll give a little bit of an update on the fact that we now have, between those two and a few others, probably over 10 different airlines engaged with us on either projects or proof of concepts on the Sabre Mosaic platform. So we're actually seeing a tremendous amount of activity pickup on the offer, order, settle, deliver track.
So you've got a session later, hence referencing a session later with Virgin.
With Virgin Australia.
To give that update. So we'll look out and listen out for that. Just for Sabre's point of view, where do you see your role being played in this area? We heard this morning in the opening sessions how we are moving from a period of talking about this and the principle of it, of this retail revolution or moving into modern retailing, to actually actual implementation, and these are examples of it happening. So are we now seeing it in practice? And what's Sabre's role in helping this industry to modernize?
So Sabre's stated vision is to be the most valued travel technology platform. And as a part of that, it's fundamental that we adopt new technologies to benefit our partners both on the distribution side as well as on the supplier side. And some of these applications are well established. Like Mike said, we launched the Sabre Mosaic platform, which has an offer platform that had IQ embedded in it from the get-go for the purpose of improving revenues and yields for our customers. And increasingly, with the advent of agentic AI, now we are equipping our customers with the ability to sell and service through agentic AI agents, and that could be the capabilities that they build themselves or that they buy from us for the distribution through the likes of ChatGPT and other large language models. It's very early in this game, and we are the first to start equipping our customers to participate, explore, experiment, and ultimately thrive in a very changing world of how travel will be shopped, booked, and consumed.
We'll talk a bit more about agentic in a minute, because there's obviously there was an announcement this week, and it's clearly where things are going. But just to stick with the IQ side of things for the time being, IQ relates to intelligence, so that's data. Talk about the kind of data that you need in order to do this Sabre IQ platform in the way you're doing it. Where does this data come from? What sort of data are we talking?
Sure, so I'll start with that one, Roshan. So our travel data cloud, we believe, is the largest, or at least one of the largest, in terms of historical travel data globally. And so what we mean with that is not just bookings, so who wants to fly where and when, but some of those intent signals, so people shopping, people looking at websites, whether that's Airline Direct or some of our partners. And so what we do is we use all that data, and we're actually using that to power some of our IQ products. So a lot of this sits on the offer side of the offer, order, settle, deliver paradigm. And really what our suppliers are trying to do there, it sounds really complex when you start talking about generative AI and the agents. What our suppliers are really trying to do is come up with better, more clever ways to price and distribute their products.
Yeah.
And so the really simple version of this is an airfare, point A to point B, London to New York, whatever it is. Historically, there's been a kind of a rigmarole around booking classes and fare filings and fare rules, et cetera. What we're seeing is our suppliers want a lot more flexibility to kind of look at customer segmentation, figure out intent of the customer, and really come up with things beyond just that airline ticket to put together in terms of a more broad offer.
Yeah.
And so that's actually what we're investing in on top of our Sabre AI platform, is using all that data to come up with better ways to price, to bundle, and ultimately to give a more revenue accretive or a more valuable offer to the customers.
So the historic data, that's been used to predict the future. I mean, the future could be unpredictable, I guess, but the historic data can obviously form a basis on which to predict the future.
Yes.
But the AI layer actually then says, actually, we will do this intelligently because new trends may emerge, or there may be things in the data you haven't seen before. So I guess that's
exactly right.
That's the intelligence side of this.
No, I mean, so quick example is if you rewind 5 or even 10 years ago, airline schedules were actually fairly static. They would plan a winter schedule and a summer schedule. What we've seen, especially since the pandemic, are airlines and their commercial departments being a lot more active. So if I look at just that schedule example, what they're doing is saying, oh, maybe I'll go from daily to double daily or 10 times a week, just because the data is changing so fast on who's booking where. And they're being a lot more dynamic, both with the schedule, but more broadly, the offer in terms of what they want to sell to the customer.
Yeah.
And so using some of the tools we're building on the Sabre AI platform, we can help recognize those patterns a lot more quicker than any human ever could. And ultimately, we can help our airlines match supply and demand a lot better.
I guess also, Roshan, for the airline, it's helping them understand how they can configure their aircraft as well. I mean, they've only got a certain amount of space in there, a certain amount of seats available. Each of them's got a value to it, but actually if that value is personalized to the individual, you can upsell and make sure you're optimizing that aircraft, because ultimately that's the key to operating an airline effectively and efficiently, isn't it?
Absolutely. In fact, we power and we maintain and manage the most advanced network planning and optimization suite. More than 100 airlines rely on Sabre software to do exactly that. How do you configure the airlines? How do you manage the fleet? How do you manage the schedule? How do you optimize for profit?
Yeah.
And matching that with the ability to intelligently construct offers is that end-to-end process that the airlines have been looking for and yearning for, which we are now able to deliver.
Yeah. Now, we've got another piece of jargon in the industry. It's called continuous revenue optimizer. That's something you're launching with this Sabre IQ. Explain what that is. That's a technical term, but what is a continuous revenue optimizer?
Sure. I'll give a little bit of background on that for the listeners. So in the revenue management space at airlines, it's historically been based on, call it a large number of observations or kind of clustering of similar sets of data. And what I mean by that is, if I use that London to New York example, the airlines over time have figured out that, okay, tends to be, 5 segments, 10 segments, business travelers, leisure travelers, people visiting friends and relatives. And based on trends in booking behavior, so people that book 6 months in advance tend to be very kind of leisure focused or planning the family vacation. People that want to go from New York to London with a day's notice, probably going on business travel and are willing to pay a premium for the schedule and the right product, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so the way these systems have worked in terms of revenue management is they actually weren't managing the revenue directly. They were managing kind of these clusters of data and deciding, when have I sold enough of these seats at one inventory level to close that cluster and start selling at a different one.
Okay.
And so if I think through the number of observation it takes to come up with that science, that's all well and good. What we've seen now is the evolution of the technology. So the fact that I'm not limited to analyzing the numbers of bookings, I can actually get down to price points. I can start looking at the individual consumer behaviors I can start looking, I can know with a great deal of certainty whether that customer is coming from a corporate booking channel or a leisure booking channel or directly at my website. And I can use all that data in near real time to actually not just open and close these buckets, but to actually individualize the offer to the customer segment.
Yeah.
So what we're actually doing is a paradigm shift whereby we're not settling for the limitations of booking classes and Saturday night stay restrictions, and we've created the industry's first, what we're calling continuous revenue optimizer, the first software that eliminates those restrictions, uses the science to directly identify what should the price level be associated with this customer segment, and we're answering the question much more directly versus going through, what do we think that means in terms of a booking class or a filed fare.
Yeah, you're calling it classless.
Classless revenue management.
It's just not traditional fare classes. It's, does it do away entirely with the idea that there is a set price for a seat on an aircraft?
That's exactly right. No,
it does. So
that's the extreme here.
So for fare shopping, it almost does away with that. I mean, for a customer's point of view, it's essentially if I'm prepared to pay that, I'm prepared to pay that. I will pay that value, and I'm happy with that. I can't say it's expensive or cheap. It's just what I was prepared to pay at that time.
Well, it's a much more kind of dynamic way for the airlines and the customers to interact and marry up. I'm looking for a service. Do you offer that service or not? And it's a really interesting thing when we talk to our airlines. Traditionally, the science and the math models have been there to do this. It's the execution layers. It's the way that the pricing engines interact with whether that's the travel agency or the airline direct. Those limitations have been there in terms of the volume of data you can transmit back and forth, or kind of that conversational nature. Yeah. And so what we're launching with Riyadh Air in the next kind of few days, weeks, and months is they're going to be the first digital native airline to take advantage of this classless, or what we mean by that is this buckets open and close, to relax those restrictions and get into much more of a conversational relationship with their consumers.
Everyone's very excited about Riyadh Air. It was already been on stage this morning, and because it's this first digital native airline, right? And no one really knows what that looks like. We got an idea, but it's not there. It's not there yet, so can't see it in actual practice. What do you think we'll see with Riyadh Air? Will its emergence, the fact we can see it operating, will that prompt a real catalyst for everybody else to follow, because they'll actually see something in practice? At the moment, it's been a lot of talk but no do. So, are you excited about what Riyadh Air can do?
Yeah, ultimately, I think everybody sort of envisions what an airline is mostly through the flying experience, the cabin experience. Yeah. Of course, we're not going to see that today, but in working with them over the last 2 years or so, we can vouch for the fact that they have thought through all of the things that happen before a passenger actually boards in a very different way. Modular technology, putting what they feel are best-in-class components together to create a shopping and booking experience that is unique, and one where the typical friction that exists in having multiple components of travel, bundling, unbundling, how disruptions are managed, etc., are much more seamless and frictionless. Yeah. Of course, that's the promise, and they have relied on a lot of our technology on the pricing side, which Mike talked about, but also on some of the offer management side for what the offer is that will be put in front of the customer. Yep. And we are excited as everybody else to see how that ultimately comes to fruition. Yeah. And then also watch them scale from a startup to a mainline carrier. And they have a great opportunity to do that, because they are riding off of the vision for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia that has incredibly ambitious plans. Not only plans to fly people back and forth, but to sell all the amenities and attractions of what the Kingdom has to offer in one package, which is also what the technology is going to try and cater to. Yeah.
What of course they don't have is historic. They won't have. It'll save us money because they weren't doing anything private. They're starting this from scratch. Yeah. For CRO, for other carriers, they will assess its impact on what is the impact on our business, what is the impact on our financials. So what are you saying the kind of impact this might have on traditional airlines?
So it's really interesting, and I'll start with Riyadh specifically. as Roshan mentioned, what the kingdom is trying to achieve, Riyadh's demographics, I think their median age in the kingdom is 27 or 28. Very young, a lot of disposable income, digitally native, highly educated. And so when their consumer base goes and shops for anything, including airfare, they expect a very different experience than maybe the generation before them 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that goes to how they're investing in the technology, how they see that experience of buying, shopping, ultimately fulfilling, and they're not intending to walk around the airport kind of with paper tickets and carbon copies. That's just not the buying experience Riyadh's looking for. So when we talk with them about CRO and some of the other offer products, they're looking for not just kind of the revenue impact, which we do actually believe is significant, somewhere upwards of 5%, depending on kind of how you use the tools.
Yep.
But they're looking more broadly to the experience of tours through the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, packaged hotels, getting in a Jeep and driving around the sand dunes, those sorts of things, all put together with that bundled airfare, if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah.
And so they're marketing that to their demographics, and that's actually kind of how they think about their go-to-market and their revenue proposition to their owners who are the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll look forward to seeing how that pans out when they start operating. Let's move on to agentic AI, because you mentioned it earlier, and we said we'd talk about it in more detail. You sense at the minute, we're moving into an era where we increasingly will talk to our machines. We keyboards and screens. We'll start maybe a whole generation of people will grow up just talk. We're used to Alexa, telling Alexa what to do with our voice. I kind of feel like we're ready for this now, and this is where agentic potentially is coming. Just give us an idea of where you think agentic is, how it's going to transform the way we shop and buy airfares.
Well, I can actually start on that, Roshan, and I'll piggyback on that Riyadh Air example, because when I talk about the median age being 27 or 28 in the kingdom, that also applies to who Riyadh Air is looking to staff their airline and ultimately come up with the decision-making process. And in that traditional revenue management world, you're looking at a lot of data, a lot of kind of booking classes and pricing. And the way Riyadh describes this is, well, we want our pricing analysts to actually be focused on the bigger picture, not just the act of coming up with a fare. And so what we're doing with them inside CRO is agentic. They're interfacing with the tools and saying, show me where I'm booking ahead, show me where I'm booking behind, show me where I've got maybe a trend that I'm not seeing based on the dashboard. And so it's a very different way of running an airline, it's a very different way of interfacing, and we're trying to use examples like that throughout all of our technology, whether that's something that's maybe a little bit more consumer facing versus something that's maybe a little bit more back office, like the revenue optimizer solutions.
Yeah. Well, the vision you see is that with agentic is that it's the digital twin idea, isn't it? Where actually the twin of you going out there, you don't even have to touch it. The agentic, your digital twin is your agent. It's your agent for you. Goes out and interfaces with an airline agent and buys the airline fare that you need. I mean, it's almost unbelievable. It's like science fiction, but that is fast coming, isn't it, Roshan? You see it.
That's right, and that's probably the simplest and most straightforward use case. But there are much more valuable use cases. If you can imagine, I'm sure you've spent time hanging on a phone in a disrupted flight situation, trying to find the next flight, or trying to find a hotel in the middle of the night because your flight was cancelled. And agentic AI capabilities are essentially autonomous systems that can solve those problems for you without human intervention and without you being involved every step of the way.
Yeah.
And we see this as a massive opportunity to, again, take friction out of travel. And we want to be in a position where we are equipping our partners to be able to be successful in that world. And today we are announcing a suite of capabilities that will do exactly that, where we will be taking to market our agentic AI-ready APIs, where our agency partners and our supplier partners can be communicating with either other agentic AI agents or large language models that will be solving these problems on behalf of humans. And the current set of APIs are not suited to speak in the language that those large language models speak.
Right.
And today the announcement is that we are launching a suite of products that are then now able to speak that language and interact on behalf of our partners to solve our mutual customers' travel problems and create travel opportunities and options.
So this is today's announcement, in fact.
Today's announcement,
happening
yes.
now. This is now available to use today.
That's right.
It's in its earliest form, I guess,
That's right.
and it will develop.
This is a brand new area,
Yeah.
and we are all stepping into it.
Yeah.
Because of our partnership with Google and how we have reoriented how we think about the world and our product roadmaps and our innovation agenda, we are the first to announce substantial investment and the launch of this. But this is going to be a area of exploration, development, experimentation for a while to come.
Yeah.
And we are inviting our supplier airline partners and hotel partners and agency partners to come on this journey with us.
Yeah, that's an open invite. Anyone wants to do this, you can do it and come. Are you working with people now to do this? Did you develop with partners or?
We are.
You
we
are.
are.
So-
And it's really a broad spectrum, as Roshan mentioned. So on one side of it, we'll have, just as an example, suppliers who will say, help us directly build these agents to interact with our customers such that, they can say, oh, I want to plan a trip to Japan, and ultimately the outcome of that will be they'll end up booking on my airline property, and that'll include a flight to Japan. So that's all great.
Yeah.
On the other side of it, you potentially have agents or other parties that don't necessarily want the whole toolkit, but they'll say, I want some API that I can put my own intelligence on, and I don't want to have to learn all the native shopping and booking and servicing commands. I want that to kind of be what's the easy button that can automate a lot of that.
Yep.
And so we're looking at this and kind of like all the way from spectrum, all the way across the spectrum, from the supplier side all the way across the marketplace.
Yeah. There's another bit of jargon associated with this, something called Model Context Protocol, MCP. Just explain what that is. This is the way of connecting different APIs. Yes, you're the technical guy, Mike.
No, that's exactly right. So
Yeah.
that's something you started hearing a lot, maybe in the last 6 or so months. Model Context Protocol, MCP.
Yeah.
So it's actually a universal kind of set of connectors, and it's really that easy button I was referring to. It's designed so that those AI agents can interface directly into Sabre's APIs, such that the end user doesn't have to be exposed to all that, what was historically a lot of complexity around the travel space. So it gets into a lot of the kind of natural language processing around, I'm thinking of taking a trip, and decomposing that into, well, what does that mean in terms of shopping, looking for offers, looking for ancillaries, trying to figure out the hotel piece of that. A lot of that gets kind of hidden behind the scenes.
I guess one of the biggest problems with the previous tech developments is it's added complexity, and you need specific knowledge or skills to implement some of this stuff. But actually, we're moving into an age of no-code or low-code integrations. So is this all built with that kind of future-proofing in mind as well?
Yeah, that's exactly the vision. That's how we're starting to build it, and that's how we're engaging with our first set of kind of partners and customers on this. Is really kids today coming out of computer science, they're not learning as much how to code as they're learning how to deal with these agents and a little bit on how to code.
Yeah.
And so as we think about our own hiring of engineers, how our partners are hiring engineers, and ultimately how our consumers are going to interact with the technology, we need to make this much more of a low-code, no-code, easy way to access the content and create these experiences so that the expertise isn't so much in how to kind of write the ones and zeros of the code, but it's in how to kind of build the proper offering.
Yeah, and I guess in some way that democratizes the industry. It lowers the barriers to entry, which is what NDC was always meant to be about. And as it comes in,
the way to think about it is getting from place A to B is actually a very complex process. There are multiple options, multiple price points, multiple combinations. And historically, we've had either individuals, humans, or machines that did very specific orders and entries to get that output.
Yeah.
And what the MCP server does is translates that into a fashion in which we might speak. I want to go from London to Paris, spend the weekend, do all these things, and come back no later than 5 p.m. on Sunday.
Yeah.
And translating that into a set of specific actionable commands that allow the likes of Sabre, various other marketplaces, and suppliers who respond to its specifics, is the translation that's done through the MCP server.
Yeah. Okay. Time's nearly up, but that's the last question to both of you. To answer the same question. There's an event like this. There's always a discussion about, who's here for the future, what role everybody plays. There's always a question about the GDSs. Sabre represents a GDS, but actually you're also a technology provider, and you're evolving and developing as well, and you're having to forge your own future in this industry. What's your vision for Sabre's role? I'm going to start with Mike and then finish. But what's your vision for Sabre in the future of this industry as it becomes more tech, as we maybe move away from the traditional legacy GDS?
No, I would say it starts with the consumer in mind.
Yeah.
How do the consumers want to buy, shop, consume? I mean, what is that experience? And ultimately, whether that's through a traditional travel agency, a corporate booking tool, or an airline.com, people are still going to travel. I mean, that's kind of like the richness of the experience of getting on a plane, visiting your family, doing business, sitting down face to face. And so we see our role as facilitating those interactions, making things easier ultimately for the consumer, whether that's technology we provide or whether that's bringing out together other pieces of technology kind of in an interoperable fashion to really smooth and take that friction out of the process.
Yeah. And Roshan?
Well, the good news is in July, I believe it was in July, at GBTA, we announced how we are moving beyond the concept of the GDS into a travel marketplace, which speaks to what is the longevity of Sabre and what Sabre's offering is, and our vision and what we're delivering on is a much fuller marketplace for low-cost carrier content, full-service carrier content, NDC content, lodging content, other content, fintech services, all of the ways in which travel buyers and retailers want to access the options for travel.
Yeah.
And that was announced in July, and we've had great reception, great press on it, and travel retailers who depend on us are quite frankly relieved that we can be their one-stop shop for where they want to go for travel options.
Yeah.
Then on the that's on the distribution side. On the airline IT side, we are busily equipping airlines to be ready for the world to come. The world of offer, order, settle, and deliver, which enables them with the greatest of retailing capabilities, greatest of payment options, greatest of delivery capabilities. And with the announcement today, also the ability for our airline partners to participate in the Sabre marketplace, other marketplaces, as well as what agentic AI might bring to the evolution of travel shopping and experience.
Yeah. Well, look, it's certainly a lot happening, and that's why events like this are so popular and so many people have turned out today, because I think everyone's eager to find out.
Indeed.
And be ahead of the curve, I think, as well, and maybe, and I know you guys are keen to make sure they are riding that wave. So thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us on ABN Cast.
Thanks for having us.
We'll see you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the time.
Yeah, cheers.